welcome everybody who is attending or attending from the recording later. Today's workshop is going to be Navigating Family Ties. My name is Amy Struder. I'm a licensed clinical therapist in the states of Missouri and in Kansas in the US. So what do? I have a private practice here called Alternative Access Counseling. Currently, I'm serving children years 11 years old to 80 years old. I see individuals. For relationship counseling, family counseling, and groups as well. The specialties that I serve are anybody who identifies or is curious about queer culture and queer identity, sex positive and sex neutral community. Those who identify as non-monogamous or curious about non-monogamy, those who work and or identify as kinky or in the BDSM community, neurodivergent folks, and disabled folks. I have a specialization in rehabilitation counseling, so a lot of the peeps that I see have some level of disability. So today I wanted to talk more about the nuclear family. When we are exploring the differences of how we connect with people in our family, the dynamics of our family, and how we navigate problem solving within our family, we have to look at what are the current social norms and the structure involving family. What are people looking for in a family? What are they hoping for? What is the theoretical dream here? So I want to take a look at this first and foremost. And I'm going to be moving, just so everybody knows, I'm going to be moving in and out of the PowerPoint to be able to also have a little bit more of a discussion. So the history of the nuclear family. This term started to appear in the early 1990s. And how they define it is a family group or a social group characterized by common residence, economic cooperation, and reproduction. It contains adults of both sexes with at least of two who maintain a socially approved relationship with one or more children who are their own or who are adopted and who are sexually cohabitating. Now, this is important to take a look at first and foremost, because when we're thinking about our ties to family, how we want to interact with our family, and how we want to create a family in the future, it's important to see what are our dynamic options, and the nuclear family is one of them. We have the option to continue to follow the social norms and make sure that we are two individuals of different assigned sexes at birth, and we produce children, and we are able to grow economically together and create a life worth living together in this viewpoint. And that's absolutely fantastic if that's what you want. However, the problem that comes up frequently is the fact that this is seen as a requirement. If you are not engaging with your family, if you are not creating a family in which looks and is represented by the nuclear family, you are going to see critique in this. Part of what we do as humans is create social norms so that we understand each other, so that we know how to communicate, so we know how to operate. However, this might have been great in the early 1900s, but this hasn't always been beneficial. And it is not always beneficial for each and every single individual and their family units. What we see in different cultures, depending on where we live, depending on our family culture, where we grow up, is this isn't always necessary. And sometimes there's a lot of downsides to this. We're not getting the support we need. We're not getting the community that we need out of the nuclear family. We might have the benefit of having another individual, a partner, who can, maybe if we're really lucky and we have a great relationship, we can rely on them. We have the same dreams. we're supporting each other. We have the same values. And if that's the case, things work incredibly well. However, when we are doing anything that is different, when we are doing things that make other people question, they're also questioning their own identity and their own values and their own morals. And that ends up causing a lot of conflict in families. In families, we want to be able to benefit one another. We want to be able to serve one another. And if you are living a life that is very different, they're going to question their own roles. They might not understand that, but that's what they're doing. What role do I play in your life? How do I support you? As a parent, you are living a completely different life than what they're used to. They're going to ask questions of, I don't know how to guide you. I don't know how to give you advice. What you're doing is different or out of the ordinary, or what you're doing is going to cause criticism of social norms from other people. And the only thing people know how to do when we grow up with this mindset or any other mindset is to try and guide you back to what is seen as typical and what is seen as socially approved. Since there's a rhetoric out there that if you do things differently than this family social group, then anything else is going to be harder for you. And a lot of families want to try and protect their youngest members. That's natural. However, in other parts of the world, we don't necessarily have to get married 19, early 20s. In other parts of the world, we might live with our families a lot longer. We might have bigger communities. We might have access to other adults in the neighborhood, other friends in the neighborhood who take on providing support, providing food, providing shelter, providing entertainment. We might watch each other's houses. We might all live together. We might cook and barbecue together. All of this looks differently when we no longer see our family as just the nuclear family, but we adopt members of the community as our family, which is really common when we're looking at anybody who doesn't have the support that they need, anybody who's immigrated, anybody who realizes that they can't do this on their own, whether financially or because of time constraints or any other reason. As we start reaching out and asking for help and asking more support, and allowing more people into our inner circle, which is more vulnerable, it allows us to grow this definition of what we call family. It allows us to change this definition of what is seen as independent. Independence, for a lot of the times when we're talking about social norms and social structures, is you doing that everything possible on your own, 100% on your own, with only the help of your biological family and your one individual you marry and becomes your partner. But that's not independence. When we have other people supporting us, we have more time to spend with our children. We have more caretakers in our lives. We have more people to teach us. We are able to share skills. We are able to learn from one another. When we have two parents working full-time jobs, whatever career you might have, but especially if they are working 40 plus hours a week, we are not able to take care of our children. We are not able to afford to give them experiences outside of the ones that we have, because we can't afford to take them to new countries. We can't afford to expose them to new cultures. There ends up being a lot of focus on the day-to-day. And so children and adults end up becoming less educated. overall. If this is not what you want, then your ties to your own biological family change. So a lot of these questions that I'm going to ask are for you to think about independently. What do you want? Why are biological family ties so important to you? Was it because you were told that it was important? Was it because you were told that there's nobody else there who can support you or understand the way that somebody else does? Is it because somebody always had your back in your family and you feel like you owe it to them? What are the benefits to maintaining that connection with your biological family? For some people, they might say it's only a financial reason. For some people, they might say, well, I feel like I'm obligated to take care of my parents when they age. Maybe it's because we really do dearly love and understand and care about a family member. And in order to stay connected to that one family member, they have to be connected to their entire family. That means that they have to withstand all of the treatment, can be negative, from their family, just in order to maintain a relationship with one of them. If we are making decisions due to obligation, how are we also making sure to set boundaries in order to make sure we are able to take care of ourselves? That is incredibly important within this. If there are no boundaries set and we are only doing things out of obligation, how is that fueling our soul? If we're making decisions to be connected with our family, to be vulnerable and honest, and I mean emotional vulnerability, not making ourselves weak. Vulnerability is absolutely a strength, but there is a risk to that. If we're being open and genuine in who we are, and we are discussing our clients, if we're discussing our career path, if we're discussing all of the content that we're making, that does create a lot of vulnerability for judgment. Doesn't make it a bad thing, just means that we have to be prepared to set boundaries with those people. If we actually truly desire and love our family or parts of our families, and we do like this idea of nuclear family, that's okay. We should embrace that. We should do what benefits us. Like I said, serves our soul. But think about, what are the aspects that you actually desire? If there are one or two family members that you actively want to spend time to and that you trust and that you feel like understand you, can you go out of your way to spend more individual time with them and decrease the time in which you are spending with the remainder of your family? Are there parts of yourself that you decide that you just don't want to talk about with them? That's okay, and that's your decision. If your family is not able to provide emotional support, and you accept that and you know that, and you don't want to discuss emotional matters with them, it is okay to say, y'all are really great company when we're playing board games or watching a movie or going out on a family vacation. That's okay to make decisions with them, just like you would friends, just like you would partners, to be able to say, this is what you're good at, and this is where we really connect. And I'm going to continue to make sure that I'm providing that to myself and to them. And I'm going to set boundaries about what we will and will not talk about or do together, places we go, or whether or not they're allowed to comment on different aspects of my life. What are some of your personal experiences with this? And this is something that each and every person needs to be able to decide. There are risks with stepping outside of the norm, with making decisions to set further boundaries or to not provide obligated or a sense of obligated family support and caregiving. Talk about those a little bit later. So, the importance of family. And when I talk about family, you're going to hear me later talk about how family can look different outside of biological family. So first and foremost, if we look at studies, being a part of and a member of a family, healthy family, can improve our mental health for each other, especially with children. We have family members that can learn, that can help us learn, to help us understand each other, helps relieve stress, helps boost our self-esteem. When we feel connected, when we have a sense of community, we are happy. When we have people we can go to and be our resources, that allows us to be able to problem solve. We have more creative ideas, we have more solutions, we have more helping hands. We don't feel stuck and hopeless all of the time. When we are isolated and we are alone and we don't have any level of support in our lives, that increases our anxiety, that increases our depression, and often results to us feeling helpless and hopeless. When we're a part of a family, we feel like we can belong. We can share stories and experiences. We can talk about tradition. We can feel connected to our roots. It's absolutely wonderful when you have a family in which you feel connected to, and you can talk about memories of grandparents. You can talk about family traditions. You can talk about why do we do the silly things that we do. We can talk about the mannerisms that we have, or the ways that we have similar laughs, or tease the members of our family in which don't like to dance. And all of those things help us feel connected. When we identify with our families, a lot of people enjoy being able to look into the histories of their families. Where did we come from? Where did we originate? What are our stories growing up? I loved, my grandmother died at the age of 96, and I loved being able to hear her stories from the 1920s and how different things were, how simple things could be. How my great-grandmother ran away to the circus. All of those are little silly parts of myself that I get to go back and think about. And I go, when I was a kid, I thought about going and being a fire breather in the circus somewhere. That would have been so cool. And the fact that my great-grandmother had the ability to do that allows me to connect back to my roots. Some of our desires, our wants, and our needs are a little genetic. And if not, we were raised in that environment and nurtured to believe that we could do some of those silly things. And the more that we connect back, it allows us to figure out, well, where are some of these jokes coming from? I had no idea that jokes around running off to the circus in my family actually meant something, because somebody did. But I wouldn't have known without going back. Now, does that change my life entirely? No, absolutely not. But it is funny and it is cute. Unconditional love. When we have a healthy family where people feel connected and feel like they belong, we might grow up with a sense that family loves one another unconditionally. They're there for you in good times and in bad. Even if they're mad at you and even if you fight, that doesn't mean at the end of the day that you're disowned or you're hated. For a lot of people, family becomes our safe space, even sometimes to be a jerk. The people that we are often really good at knowing how to push all of their buttons, how to trigger them. We know exactly what to say to win an argument. That all happens within families. And often that's because we have the sense of unconditional love, because we feel safe. Now, siblings don't like when I say that. And child and parents don't like that I say that. That a lot of times the other person is acting up because they feel safe. And they're not doing this around other people because they feel safe. And that's not fair. It's never fair by any means. But it is a phenomenon that frequently happens. And that can be a benefit. Having people that we can create emotional ties to, who we can encourage one another, who's going to show up when something goes wrong, that sense of belonging and having somebody to spend time with, have our backs, that can be great. Sometimes we don't really bond together until we moved far away from one another, or we spent a significant period of time away from one another. My little sister and I knew exactly how to push each other's buttons. We grew up, we're both professionals. She's a nurse. I'm a therapist. Hilarious how that happens, both in the helping profession. But we know exactly how to piss each other off. We live a considerable amount of time from each other in different states. But when she's pissed off about something from work, we might not get along with everything in our lives. We have very different viewpoints. However, she's going to call me and she's going to complain about what's going on at work and ask for my advice as her older sibling. Because of that bond that was created through a sense of going through things together, that feels natural for a lot of people. She might not come to me for other things. She might not trust my opinion and other things because, again, we feel very differently. But there are some things that she is always going to come to me with. We develop that with other people, but it takes a lot more work if we did not grow up together and if we don't have those strong emotional ties from childhood. But sometimes this bonding is not healthy. Just like sometimes the support and the air quotes encouragement that we get from our family members might not be healthy. When it is genuine, when somebody actually takes an interest in what you are doing and how you are growing as a person, and they are showing up for you and they are showing encouragement and praising you and willing to be your cheerleader or there if you need support, if things go wrong, some of that support and encouragement is really just focused around how do we get you to go back to the social norms in which, or that family culture expectations in which you were raised in. So when things are healthy, when everybody feels like they're all on the same team, they have similar missions and similar values, this can be wonderful. But what happens if that's not the case? Well, then what we're looking at is being in an invalidating environment. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in just a second. But I really want you to think about what are some of the societal expectations or the family expectations that you have in your family. What are some jokes in which your family has made? When you get older, who has already made statements that you're taking care of your parents? Are you expecting a sibling to step in and take those roles? Is it important to you that your parents are taken care of, or your grandparents are taken care of, or aunts and uncles, tias and tios, that they are taken care of? If something happened and you have nieces, nephews, nibblings that need support, are you willing to step in and take that support? And all of those answers are going to be very different depending on each and every person, but whether or not they feel a sense of desire or obligation to do so. And none of these answers are wrong. All of the answers in which people have are right for very different reasons. However, I do absolutely acknowledge the fact that there is going to be conflict whenever we are going against those social norms. If we are deciding that no, I don't want to be involved with my nuclear family, I don't want to be involved with my extended family, I don't even want to get married, I don't want to have an children, I don't want to connect in any of these ways. Maybe it's because we don't need the tradition of it all. Maybe it's because we don't see the point, which is perfectly fine, perfectly fair. Maybe we don't necessarily believe that that is the best way to get support. Not always wrong. Maybe we feel like we connect with other people much better outside of our families. Yeah, that can absolutely be the case. But all of those answers are going to be very different depending on how we grew up. So I'm going to take a second. We're going to switch back. A lot of times I have clients who came in with poor treatment or were in invalidating situations. An invalidating environment is when we communicate our feelings and our thoughts, people see them as not making sense, or they're inaccurate, or it's an overreaction. This comes from, I'm a dialectical behavior therapist, and this comes from my adolescent workbook. And I choose this one because I feel like it's one of the best as far as highlighting what is an invalidating environment look like. Sometimes families and teachers and our community is just a poor fit, and it's not a place in which we're going to thrive. That doesn't necessarily mean that these relationships are all abusive. But a lot of families did not grow up knowing how to provide emotional support, not knowing how to help somebody grow personally. They might have been taught how to help somebody grow professionally, and I'm going to put air quotes in there, because for a long portion of our history, we took over family businesses, or we married into a family business. When we look at history in its entirety, we found a trade, we were taught a trade, or we created a trade, and we stuck to that through most of our lives. It was seen as absolutely ridiculous or silly if we end up finding another career. We did what we knew. So when somebody grows up in an invalidating environment where they might have different viewpoints, they might not feel like their emotions are taken seriously. They might not feel respected in their thoughts or their opinions. And anytime that happens, there is going to be criticism. People get defensive. And especially parents, when we're trying to do the best that we know how to do, we repeat phrases that we heard in the past and we repass them down to our kids. Often I'll get angry teenagers and they'll say, my parents just aren't listening to me. They don't understand. And I try to explain, and they think that my explanation is excuses, or that I'm trying to get out of something, or that I'm trying to manipulate them. And they never understand why I'm getting so upset. And even just in these invalidating environments, we start to feel more and more isolated. We were talking about bond and that sense of belonging and that connection, in how we have other people around us that just understand, who are going to be there for us through thick and thin. And that's great when you didn't grow up in an invalidating environment, or if things are worse, in a traumatic and or abusive environment. And so a lot of my clients will say that they end up feeling suppressed, like they weren't allowed to have opinion, like they weren't allowed to have thoughts, they weren't allowed to think differently outside of their parents, that they were frequently told that something was wrong with them, or they were a mistake, or like if they had siblings, that their siblings were obviously their parents' favorite child. It's because they got along, it's because they had the same values, it's because they were better at school, or they took an interest in their family's business or their career. They did what they were told. And when you start questioning social norms and expectations, and when you start looking at the world differently and start asking the questions, why? What does this do for me? How does this benefit me? How does this benefit society? Why are things the way that they are? You often find yourself in a situation where you're questioning everything around you and starting to look for things that actually do serve you. If we look at the early 90s, the early 1900s, the reason that the nuclear family was created, go ahead and do your own research, but it had to do with labor. It had to do with finances. It had to do with war. It had to do with trying so hard to break apart from what was previously the norm and create something different. And some of that religious sentiment is sprinkled into that. It's not what this topic is today, but some research of why nuclear families started. Feel free to go and look into those components. I have always heard, especially from my teenagers, blood is thicker than water. And they were taught that that is the reason their family is going to be thicker. Your family is going to be more supportive. They're going to be there for you than the new people that you meet in your life. Water, thinner. That's not the full phrase. Blood is thicker than water, but family isn't about blood. Family is about faith and loyalty and who you love. And if you don't have those things, I don't care what the blood says, you're not family. Family is all of those benefits that I shared with you in the beginning. And if you grow up with that biologically, that's absolutely fantastic. But if you didn't grow up with that, then that gets created throughout your life. And it takes a lot of dedication to be able to surround yourself by those who are faithful and loyal and who love you unconditionally. And those who understand you and have the same values, or at least respect that you have those differences and don't want to change you. That is family. Love this quote. For people who have immigrated, for people who have left their family, for people who have lost their family, even when it was incredibly supportive, we start to create family from those around us. And a lot of time in the queer community, we have done a lot of work to create chosen family. We have found other people to guide us. We found other people to nurture and take care of. We found other people to support us. I want you to take a second to think about who makes up your support system. If you felt ill today, who would you call to make sure you had food? If you were depressed or anxious, grieving, who would check in on you and make sure you're okay? Who would argue with you to get the help that you need when you're being too stubborn to do it yourself? If you're low on cash, who's going to lend you a little bit of money so you can make sure to make ends meet? If there was a natural disaster, whose couch are you going to sleep on? It's okay for you to say, I don't have an answer to any of these things right now. That's fine. You might be in a period in which you are growing your chosen family, in which you are assessing those in your life of who you want to get closer to, of who you want to truly know you. Or you might be in a place in which you're starting to just learn how to trust yourself and you're not ready to trust somebody else yet. Maybe you've spent a long time learning that every time that you get close to people, they're not to be trusted. That's okay. It takes a lot of work to set those boundaries and say, for right now, I don't want to trust anyone and I just want to rely on myself, and that is perfectly fine. When you are ready, this is an option that you have. But you can surround yourself with other members of your support system. Think about who can help you grow personally, who can help you grow professionally. Sometimes that means other content creators, learning from them. Sometimes in the last 10 years, sometimes for a lot of my peeps, it's been, spending a lot of time on YouTube and going, okay, I want to learn from somebody. I don't want to have to learn all of this on my own. If I'm going to learn how to start my own business, if I'm going to be able to find access to affordable cameras, if I'm going to be able to find access to affordable clothes to wear, if I'm going to find access to clients, I want to know how somebody else did this. And it might mean the first time you do this, you slowly open up your support system to blogs and YouTubes. But that takes trust, that takes vulnerability, learning from other people. Even if they're not close, even if they don't know that you're learning from them. It takes a lot of vulnerability to reach out to the same people and say, I have been learning from you over the last few months. hey, I would actually like to get to know you. You seem like a decent person. All of those little moments in which we reach out, we are starting to grow that support system who might eventually become our chosen family. Another question to ask yourself, in your chosen family dynamics, what why do you choose to stay? What made you want to stay connected with the people that you are? Why do you even bother to get close to people? Why do you even bother to tell people, oh, I'm having a bad day today? Can you send me some memes, some pet pictures? Why do you bother to bring up, oh, I'm really excited. Like I finally grew my platform out to 2,000 people. Sometimes our support systems become our fans or our clients. Now, I do caution people to make sure that you have support outside of those who are financially supporting you, because there is bias within those relationship dynamics. We should just have variety, spice of life, to be able to make sure that we are nurturing ourselves from very different perspectives. Healing trauma within chosen families. When we find other people that we are close to, that we can relearn how to trust others, that we start to relearn how to share our stories, we start to relearn how to create a family culture, we start to learn how to discuss our values. This takes time, and this is incredibly difficult. Through all of our relationships and our friendships, it is not uncommon to say, oh, I feel like you're a sister to me. I feel like you're the sibling that I never have. To find other people who nurture you and guide you, and to adopt them as one of your parents, to adopt them as a mentor. All of that is normal. And we start to heal from that as we feel safe and as we feel secure. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of investment into other people in order to do that. A lot of my clients will say, outside of your standard chosen family, a lot of my clients are in the kin community. So when we talk about leather families, or we talk about rope families, we talk about mentors that we've had, or we talk about play partners, these are people that a lot of my clients will say, ha, these are the ones that I connect with. These are the ones that I know if I'm doing a scene with them, I know they're going to have my back if I fall apart and I'm crying on the floor and I've got snot spewing down my face. These are the people who are going to make sure that I'm cleaned up at the end of the day. This kindness, this compassion, this level of vulnerability that we open ourselves up to, this is all a part of the healing process, but it takes time. And it takes the desire to want to continue to do these things. A lot of my clients will feel over time, they'll find communities, or they'll end up putting together content houses, and they invite everybody that they love and they care about, and those that they want to shoot with, those that they want to make sure that they're growing their business and they're advertising with, people who have the same values, people who have the same morals. People are going to have their back at the end of the day, and we create these communities so that we're not doing this alone. This is part of that healing process. But that means taking things that we didn't necessarily learn from in our families, like creating boundaries, and applying those things to our new connections in the world. By making sure we create a validating environment, and those who are not able to be in this environment because they have different opinions on how they want to be able to live their lives, helping them find other places to go. Like I said, setting those boundaries and say, this is not a space for you. All of these things go towards that healing. We want to find other people in our lives that we can ask for advice and support in their opinions. Even if it means that we don't end up getting their help in the end, that's okay. I see this also happening a lot in DIY or crafting communities. We end up having little experts of different aspects of the hobby. Maybe somebody's not a great woodworker. That's absolutely fine. Maybe they have somebody else, though, that is. When you can find the person to supply the handles, the wooden handles, to the leather flogs that you are creating, this gives us a mutual connection. This gives us what we feel like is a purpose, and that also we are not taking on tasks that don't benefit us, that we don't enjoy. We are outsourcing those things to other people. And maybe it's not creating a family in what we would feel is the true sense. Maybe it's creating colleagues. Maybe it's maybe it's us networking. Maybe it's just supporting through that. It's better than nothing. So lastly, I'm going to touch base here. And I want to talk a little bit about the ballroom scene. Share my screen one more time. In the 1980s, and even before this, the ballroom culture started. But it's documented with the 1890s, and I can't go back in time to prove otherwise. We would have interracial drag balls in a lot of our big cities. These were created so that people had a sense of community. People had other people that could say, yes, I understand, me too, I agree, to have people to go to, have people understand the stigma of what they were facing. This is where the term coming out started being more widely used. They took from debutantes formals, this coming out to society, coming out to your peers, the sense of growing up, being acknowledged, wanting to be witnessed, this ritual of saying, this is me and this is who I am. I'm going to present myself to the world. This became a big aspect of the ballroom culture. I am here to take up space. I am here to be known. I am here to make a name for myself, but I am also here to have a sense of community, to be an active part of community. And at the time in the ballroom culture, there was a big emphasis on how do we support each other? How do we teach each other, air quotes here, on how to pass? As a gay male, how do we teach one another how to walk straight, how to dress straight, how to be professional as a heterosexual cis male. As a trans woman, how do we teach you how to pose? How do we teach you how to dress and strut and walk and hold your chin up? All of these different aspects became a part of culture. All of these different aspects of providing support and belonging and connection and love became a part of the culture. And this is where houses were created. They were created to network and have kinship outside of their biological families. They were created as a safe place to go when you were attacked on the street. They were created as somebody to turn to when you couldn't finish sewing your dress. I have some wonderful quotes here. And I want to be able to read them with the utmost respect here. Because a lot of these people did not get to live into their 80s and 90s. And we understand how that is when we don't have the support that we need, when we don't have an environment in which we are safe, in which we are secure. Unfortunately, we don't always make it to live to 96 like my grandmother did. And she did so, creating her own family. So quote number 1, they became my extended family. And I didn't want to use the word extended because they were and they are my family. When we navigate family ties, we have to decide what our own definition of family is and whether or not we want to continue to invest in societal norms of family. Our second quote here, that was the particular family that I belonged to. So it was one apartment just full of people, and everybody in there were like family, helping each other to get ready, helping each other get whatever we needed for a category. I don't know about you, but if I get ready for an event or if I even try and travel, I am going to leave everything all over my place. And none of my ducks are going to be in a row. There's going to be clothes everywhere, and I'm not going to be able to find what I need to wear, and I'm going to somehow forget my hygiene products or my medication. When you have dozens of hands following you around and grabbing your things that you forget or remembering your list of things that you need and making sure you have a soft pillow to put your head on and lovingly pushing you out the door. It's a very different experience than when you're trying to step out into the world or going into a new place alone. And our last quote, the ballroom transmits cultural knowledge through these kinship networks. It just passes down. I talked about ritual and bonding and biological families in the beginning, but this absolutely happens through our history. We have so much history working in the adult entertainment industry, and it goes back centuries. It goes back all throughout every culture in existence. And the ones that get to live to be in our textbooks that we get to learn about today It's because they had kinship networks. It's because they had support. And most of the time, it's because they weren't alone. And so I reiterate throughout all of my sentiment here in discussing how do we navigate family ties. We figure out what benefits us. What do we need? What kind of support do we need? Who do we love? For what reasons? And who loves us for what reasons? And we have to have the audacity to ask those questions and to think about the whys and the whats and the whens and the risks that we're willing to take. And some of those risks are cutting out our other family members. Some of those risks mean we might not get notified when our biological family members or those who raised us passed away. We might not get to say our goodbyes if we are not connected with them. We might not be able to prevent any bad things from happening to them. And that is a risk of stepping away from them and pursuing a life that is much more genuine to you. But it's also a risk to not invest in those who do understand you or who could understand you. It is also a risk to not ask other people to be a part of your social circles, to be a part of your support network. It's a risk to not ask your favorite YouTube content creator to have a one-on-one and get to know them better. Even our chances in which we are saying no to things heavily impact our future. Having boundaries with blood family, with our own chosen family, with colleagues, with our friends, with our children, they are so important. Every time we are saying no, we are saying yes to something else that serves us. But we also have to say yes. If we say no to everything, we are not going to be able to create the things that we desperately need in our lives. In that, saying yes to things and saying yes to people and going out and taking more risks on creating a life in which is authentic to you, that is how we heal. And that is how we grow. So I conclude today with who do you want to say yes to? And encouraging you to take the risks to reaching out to people you haven't talked to in a while and say, hey, I actively want to learn more about you. I actively want to get to know you. Can we set up time together? And for those of you who have the ability to go back to loved ones, whomever they may be, and say, thank you. Thank you for being a part of my family. Thank you for nurturing me and caring about me and checking in on me and sending me memes. I encourage you to do so. We heal ourselves through community. We heal ourselves through taking risks. But it's important to know who we are in order to set those boundaries. So thanks for attending today. Take care. I encourage you to do so. We heal ourselves through community. We heal ourselves through taking risks. But it's important to know who we are in order to set those boundaries. So thanks for attending today. Take care.